The rust-encrusted swing set groaned a death rattle in the suffocating twilight. Each creak mimicked the discordant clang of the distant church bell, a tolling that seemed to claw at the fragile silence, a prelude of the horrors to come. The chirping insects, usually a comforting soundtrack to twilight, now sounded like the whispers of damned souls, their tiny voices swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Zephyr Hills, a town clinging stubbornly to its idyllic facade, was all a lie. Beneath the veneer of normalcy, a predator stalked, his presence a miasma of decay and violence. He called himself Baal, a grotesque parody of a forgotten 70s shock rocker, a name whispered only in terrified breaths. His face, or rather the thing he wore in place of a face, was a stripped and torn, paint-peeled latex mask, a mask that was now a mockery of its newer days when it bore the visage of a famous shock rocker from the arena rock days of the 70s. It was a relic from his mother's misguided attempt at a Halloween costume, bought years ago when she had yet to witness the full, terrifying extent of her son's descent into psychosis. Behind the mask, however, lurked a mind fractured beyond repair, a whirlwind of lunacy where violence was choreographed to the relentless pulse of heavy metal anthems. It was a mind that remembered, in vivid detail, the sharp sting of betrayal. Years ago, they had locked him away, a disturbed boy, his room a shrine to the macabre, walls plastered with demonic imagery and lyrics scrawled across in blood-red writing, a testament to his obsession with the theatrical violence of Lord Mania, the nihilistic fury, Breakfast of Torture, the unhinged energy of Ring of the Dead. His behavior, a warped imitation of his idol stage personas, had escalated from cruelty towards animals to unsettling sexual degradation to obsession with specific people in town. The doctors, in their cross-armed, sterile pronouncements, had labeled him a schizophrenic, a ticking time bomb, oblivious to the depth of the twisted artistry within him. But when he'd escaped, he slithered back into the Zephyr Hills landscape like a venomous spider, his sanity further shredded, his rage amplified by burning thirst for revenge. A symphony of retribution scored for the instruments of blood-drenched pain and death. His first victim, Sarah Renee, was a vibrant high school student with hair the color of fire, possessed a striking resemblance to a woman he'd fixated on from a particular album cover. A resemblance that sealed her doom. He'd stalk her for weeks, her life reduced to a perverse game orchestrated to the rhythms of grim and brutal metal, leaving cryptic messages, lyrics torn from magazines, a single rusty nail hammered into her mailbox, each action designed to twist the knife of terror deeper. The attack came under the suffocating weight of a blackened night, the air thick with the cloying sweetness of Confederate jasmine, a morbid perfume for the slaughter. The rain on the early morning of her body's discovery was a relentless acidic drizzle and slicked the quarry floor, reflecting the sickly glow of forensic lights. Sarah's body lay sprawled amidst the jagged obsidian rocks as a parody of repose. Her skin, once vibrant, was now a canvas of horrifying artistry. Her flesh bore the brutal, visceral imagery of the album by Viper Soldier. Your blood tonight, I want it. The wounds weren't random gashes. They were meticulously carved, each cut deliberate, each incision precise. Her abdomen mirrored the album's central image, formed amidst a chaotic tapestry of lacerations, the raw flesh pulled back to create a horrifying, gaping maw. The blood, diluted by the relentless rain, seeped into the porous rock, creating grisly rivulets that traced the contours of her ravaged body. Her eyes, wide and vacant, stared accusingly at the indifferent sky, reflecting the stormy turmoil within the evening itself. The killer hadn't simply inflicted pain. He sculpted it, crafted a macabre work from the raw materials of her suffering. He'd reproduced the album's lurid detail with a chilling proficiency. the precision suggesting hours of painstaking work, a perverse dedication to his sick artistry. The deep crimson stains, mirroring the album's blood-red hues, seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light, a telling of the brutal energy that had consumed her. Forensics Chief Val Hart knelt beside the body, her usually stoic face etched with a grim fascination. She had seen death before, violence too, but this transcended mere brutality. It was a ritualistic slaughter meticulously planned, a dark performance orchestrated with chilling competence. The police, overwhelmed by the sheer barbarity, hastily filed it under unsolved, a random act of senseless violence. They failed to see the grim pattern. Yet, the horror etched not just on Sarah's flesh, but also on the bodies of two other victims found weeks apart. Gruesome hat tips to a different heavy metal song or album cover. The heavy metal wasn't just a backdrop to Ball's horrific performance. It was the score, the conductor's baton guiding his grim choreography of death. The rain continued to fall, washing away the blood, but not the horrifying revelation. Each drop uttering to the darkness that lurked within the town, a darkness that reveled in its ghastly creations, a darkness that hummed with the discordant notes of an unseen, brutal symphony. The only witness was the cold, uncaring night itself. His second target, Pastor Dill, had been the object of Ball's adolescent scorn, his judgmental pronouncements feeding Ball's burgeoning psychosis. The attack, a symphony of rage inspired by the influence of the band Summons, named Face Mask, a speed metal song, was as meticulously planned as the first, a gruesome replication of the song's themes. The pastor's study became a raging pyre, consuming him amidst the flames, a spectacle of divine punishment. His body, found among the charred timbers, bore the distinct marks of torture, a grotesque mirroring of the album's cover art, his suffering a perverse offering to Baal's demonic muse. Fear, thick and suffocating, spread through Zephyr Hills like a noxious gas. The cops' investigation, hamstrung by the absence of concrete evidence, seemed more like an exercise in futility. There were no witnesses, no usable fingerprints, only the chilling, carefully arranged crime scenes that served as recording to Baal's artistic depravity. He was a ghost, his existence interwoven with the town's collective nightmare, amplified by the dark melodies of metal. Now, Phoebe Carter, a young musician, became Baal's third interest of bloodlust. Her talent, a spark of defiance against the suffocating darkness of Zephyr Hills, ignited a twist of fascination in Baal, feeding his obsession like a kindling thrown onto a raging inferno. He stalked her, his actions driven by the manic energy of a thrash metal anthem this time, Don't Dig Graves in Starlight, creating a perverse parallel to the lyrics, her abduction a plunge into the subterranean hell, mirroring the grim narratives of countless songs. The shallow grave, his chosen stage for this particular performance, became her tomb. The horror she endured, mirroring the tempo and rhythm of his chosen song, was a perverse performance, a solo jam for a sick and disgusting audience of one. He left her to die slowly, her screams swallowed by the earth, a final agonizing note in his composition of murder. Each murder was a performance, a carefully constructed act of terrible artistry. Baal being the conductor, his victims his instruments, and the heavy metal anthems his terrifying score. He now began leaving behind clues, subtle yet unmistakable blood-red lyrics scrawled across walls, symbols and scenes carved into the victim's flesh, objects carefully placed to echo the imagery of his favorite album art. These were not simply murders. They were gruesome tributes, paying tribute to his darkest obsessions. Now, Detective Fuchs, a man weathered by years dealing with grim realities of small-town life, as well as the unexplained, began to notice the disturbing pattern. He wasn't a music aficionado, But he recognized the recurring themes, the unsettling precision of mutilations. He delved into the world of heavy metal, immersing himself in its dark subculture, its aggressive soundscapes. The chilling truth dawned on him. This was no ordinary killer. This was an artist of death, a twisted auteur creating his masterpiece in blood and bone. He unearthed Baal's past, the hospitalization, and the escape. The pieces, once scattered fragments, fell neatly into place, revealing the horrifying link between Baal's crimes and the music that fueled his madness. Driven by a mixture of grim determination and a primal need for justice, Fuchs launched his own investigation. He prowled the shadow alleys of Zephyr Hills, venturing into places untouched by sunlight, following whispers and clues guided by the rhythms of the music that had become the soundtrack to Baal's reign of terror. He discovered Baal's hideout, a dilapidated house on South Road 54 and 18th Street, a chaotic sanctuary where reality and fantasy blurred into a tapestry. After some grueling time and a perverse journey into the realms of a hellish rock and roll nightmare, they met, and it was a fury. The final confrontation unfolded in an abandoned church, a fittingly gothic backdrop for Baal's grand finale. Darkness hung heavy in the air, broken only by the flickering light of candles that cast eerie and ghostly shadows, mimicking the artwork from countless metal albums. Baal, cloaked in his tattered mask, waited amidst the darkness, his eyes burning with a fevered intensity. He had chosen Fuchs as his final victim, the climactic movement of his deadly symphony. Once they finally clashed, it was on. Their struggle was brutal, a primal skirmish of wills, a battle between the forces of order and chaos, sanity and madness. Fuchs, fueled by rage and the desperate hope of justice, wrestled with Baal, his strength and resolve clashing against the killer's manic energy. In the end, he managed to subdue him, the mask torn from his face, revealing a weathered and horrible face contorted by years of madness and violence. At the end of all of it, Baal was finally wounded and ultimately incarcerated, his deadly concert silenced, yet the chilling echo of his crimes lingered through school essays, yellowed and ripped newspaper pages, and in columns on forgotten spots on the internet. Compositions etched into the history of Zephyr Hills. The town never fully recovered, its idyllic veneer shattered by the grotesque artistry of its most notorious son, Baal, the murderous shock rocker. The rust-encrusted swing set continued its mournful groan, a constant reminder of Baal and his bloody masterpiece. The wind-driven church bell counterpointed the legacy of the fear he left behind. The music played on, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had been unleashed, a telling to the terrifying power of obsession, and a chilling ballad for a town that is forever changed.